Hi everyone, Rabbi Abram here, and I gave this sermon on November 13th. It's a story as old as time. A man travels to parts unknown and finds himself at a well outside a village. The man's timing is perfect because also at the well is a marriageable woman who is watering her family's flocks. The man falls in love with the woman and they soon get married. I just described not one, but three different stories in the Bible. Moses finds Zipporah at a well in Midian after he flees Egypt. Jacob finds Rachel at a well near the city of Nahor after he flees Esau from Canaan. And finally, we have in this week's Torah portion, a servant of Abraham finds a wife for Isaac at a well in Haran, and where he discovers Rebekah. This reoccurring theme of finding a wife by a well is a thing in the Bible. But what to call this thing is up for debate. We have the data points that provide a pattern, but what does the data mean, and how do we interpret it? This question is one of the reasons why the Bible is a living text. Over time, we developed new tools to understand and study these significant data points in the Bible. And a really amazing tool that helped us understand the data points of finding love at a well is something called a type scene. And Dr. Robert Alter was the first to use this tool in the Bible. Professor Alter did not invent the type scene, but took this tool and that was used in Greek mythology and brought it over to biblical studies. A type scene is a convention that a culture agrees is the standard way to tell a story. And Dr. Robert Alter claims that this is a betrothal type scene, that in order for the Bible to be a New York Times bestseller in ancient Israel, if you will, betrothals needed to happen in this way for the audience to enjoy the story. And I have a great, relatively modern example. Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie is considered to be a well-written murder mystery novel that works in the convention of how we like the murder mystery genre. We are introduced to our hero, Detective Poirot, a cast of characters, a murder, and a mystery of not knowing who committed the murder. We don't know who did it, and we often don't know as much as the detective. However, enough foreshadowing and clues are offered for us to guess with the detective. Murder on the Orient Express is a good murder mystery novel because it matches our cultural conventions of this genre. So what happens if at the end of the book, Detective Poirot discovers out of nowhere that it was Dracula who actually murdered Mr. Ratchet? No one would like this book because it does not meet the type scenes required for a good murder mystery novel. The conventional type scene for our culture is only the cast of characters introduced at the beginning of the book can be the murderer. Adding a supernatural character at the very end of a murder mystery is bad storytelling and entirely breaks the type scene we have deemed as good storytelling. However, sometimes type scenes do break the convention to make them more interesting, but doesn't break them enough to anger the audience. Indeed, when I described in the Bible the same story and these betrothal type scenes at the well, each story actually had some unique differences. And Dr. Robert Alter points out that in the Rebekah/servant narrative, Rebekah draws water from the well rather than the servant, while in other type scenes, the men draw water from the well. Robert suggests that the ancient Israelite audience would have noticed this detail instantly as subverting the type scene, and they probably enjoyed it immensely. The story subverts the type scene enough to make it interesting, but not too much to anger the audience. Okay, so back to Murder on the Orient Express. I'm about to spoil the ending, so if you haven't read the book, you may want to sort of skip through this part. But the book was written in 1934, so don't feel too bad about spoiling it. In the book, the great detective Poirot discovers that everyone helped in murdering Mr. Ratchet because everyone had a reason to hate him. And what a wonderful subversion of the usual convention of murder mystery novels. The usual convention is that there is one murderer in a murder mystery, and it's up to the detective and the reader to figure out who it is. but Agatha Christie surprises the audience and makes everyone the murderer. But this still works within the type scene because it is not an outside supernatural figure, but within the cast of characters presented at the beginning of the book. Agatha Christie successfully subverts the type scene enough to make it interesting, but not too much to anger the audience. Every culture has different type scenes that work for their version of telling stories. What Dr. Robert also taught us is that type scenes can be considered a tool to help understanding the Bible in an updated way. This tool teaches that details that are missing or different from similar scenes in the Bible were super obvious to its original audience and made for great storytelling in that culture. However, type scenes are just one tool of many that we have in our arsenal. And I look forward to new tools that will continue to give us new insights of our Bible. Developing tools isn't actually that hard. And inspired by the betrothal type scene, I'm going to attempt to get more out of the text with my own tool. So here we go. I believe that these 3 data points are illustrating something other than betrothal. They're also illustrating the powerful relationship women have with water in the Bible. What if we add a 4th data point that has nothing to do with betrothal? For example, what if we add Numbers 20, verses 1 and 2? The verses go like this. The Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. The community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron. The death of Miriam prevents the Israelites from having water. In my mind, this 4th data point changes our perspective to show that our matriarchs had a powerful relationship with water. Water is not just a place of meeting in the Bible, water is also a source of life. And these data points show that our matriarchs had a certain affinity for bodies of water in the Bible. They just didn't drink and meet there. Bodies of water, like well, were places of divinity. For example, you are a garden spring, a well of fresh water, says God to the woman in Song of Songs. Hagar is visited by an angel at a well and told that she would have a son, Ishmael. In my opinion, Rebecca's story in this week's Parsha is not just a betrothal type scene, but a scenario that powerful things happen at places with water, especially for women. I hope that many of you can come to this story and string together your own data points and decide and develop your own perspective. Because scholars and rabbis should not have monopolies on how to develop tools to use and understand our Bible. Thank you.